thanks to our partnership with the University of Exeter, was to apply for a Heritage Lottery Fund grant to do some work on the history of St James's Park. And the reason we were doing that now was we were aware that with the likelihood of redevelopment going ahead, the old grandstand being taken down, a new away end, that the ground would never look the same again. And so we wanted to do something to really collect as much as we can about the great history of the club. And I hope you feel we captured some of that on the boards upstairs. Also, make sure you take away with you the brochure that's been done in the style of an old programme on the history of the ground and the people that go into it. You'll notice that West Country Television were here filming and interviewing our former legends. Just to let you know, that piece is going to be on tomorrow night, so you don't need to rush home tonight to watch it. It's going to be on tomorrow night. So it gives me enormous pleasure to welcome you all here today. It's an event that we've done in collaboration with the Senior Reds group, who are a brilliant group, and there's so many members from the Senior Reds here, bringing senior members of the club together. And the one thing we've learned as we've developed the Senior Reds is that people love talking about their early memories of watching football here, and so often we got fans that go right back to the 30s that are still alive and still talking about it. So part of the project has been talking to supporters about their memories and their favourite players and everything else to do with the club. But what it always comes back to, as well as the importance of the fans, is it the players. So we are so lucky today to have 3 members of the first ever team, Exeter City team, to win promotion, the 63-64 team. Graham Rees. Graham is the 6th all-time appearance maker for Exeter City. 370 games. There's only 5 players that have played more times for Exeter City. I don't know if you can guess who they are. Arnold Mitchell, Keith Harvey, Peter Hatch, Steve Flack, and Tony Kello. So Graham is right up there with those legends. So you'll be hearing a lot more from Graham in a minute. Brilliant to have George Lay with us. That was a real surprise and a real bonus, because George now lives in America. Personally, I'm really excited because the first ever Exeter City goal I saw scored in 1967 at Brentford was by George. A 30-yarder into the top corner. It was actually memorable. I can still see it all happening in my mind in front of me.
I think it was a pass back to our goalkeeper, wasn't it?
And George played 14 times in the promotion season, so was very much part of that team. And then, of course, Alan Banks, who we've had talking to us on many occasions, still lives locally and is a great part of the Exeter City family. But it's great to have three legends from that team here. We've also got Selwyn here. Where's Selwyn? Yeah, Selwyn Rice, who a slightly different football career, but it started here in Exeter. So Selwyn was a reserve here, but he went on to famously play for Wimbledon. And I've just been seeing an extract from a book on Wimbledon's history that calls him a farmer's boy from Devon. And it said he never took any prisoners. But Selwyn is willing at the end to show you his scars that Billy Bremner gave him. And he is willing that for a £5 donation to the Supporters Trust. So without more ado, fantastic to have you here, Graham. You had a fascinating history at Exeter City. Tell us all about it.
Right. Well, it's going to seem a bit of a history lesson. I did this morning what I did 63 years ago. I came down on the train from Cardiff, and I was coming down for a week's trial. Mr. Norman Dodgin was the player manager, and he met me at the station, and he said I was going to play in 2 practice matches. Now in those days, they used to have 2 practice matches before the season started, first team against reserves. And we used to get, well, we did get for the final practice on the Saturday, over 3,000 people. I must have made a reasonably good impression, because he said, right, I'm taking you home and I've got to persuade your mum and dad that you sign professional in 2 weeks' time. I was 16, still in school, but my birthday was on the 28th of August, if you want to send me a card. And I'd be 17 on the 28th of August, and he said, if your mum and dad agree, you can sign professional. So he drives me home in a Hillman Minx. We drive around Gloucester, because he didn't fancy going on the Oust ferry. Anybody been on the Oust ferry? No? Before the bridge? Oh, it was horrendous trying to get on there. So we went on, it took 6 hours driving around Gloucester in a Hillman Minx. We get home, our terrace house is about 300 yards from Tom Jones. That's fame for you. I've got 3 sisters. The middle one, Barbara, she was in school with Tom. And my mother said, don't have anything to do with him. Because he'll never do any good. I could have been holidaying in California for the last 50 years. My mum thought, right, this is an important man coming home here with my boy. She puts tea on in the front room. We only went in the front room at Christmas. He said to Mum, right, I want your boy to sign professional in 2 weeks' time. He said, I'm taking him back with me tomorrow. And she said, right, fine. When will he be home? And in his diplomatic way, he said, oh, he won't be coming home. Well, there were a few tears. My dad, in contrast, leans across, shakes my hand and says, all the best, son. Because he can see one less mouth to feed. So we go back 6 hours round Gloucester on the way back. Norman Dodgin never stopped talking about football. He was an absolute football nut, and he deserved to have had a much longer career. But on the way back, he didn't stop talking, he didn't stop smoking, and I don't think I said a word. And he actually, the windscreen on the car used to mist up. And he drew, while he's driving, he drew a football pitch on the mist. He was a nutter. And he said, look, this is how I want you to play on the left wing. And he'd say, you get the ball there and you move it there and you get to the byline, you cross it. And if the ball's on the other side, you get behind your fullback. When the ball comes over, nip in, score a goal. He was doing all of this while he's driving and drawing on the windscreen. Anyway, we get back to Exeter. I signed professional on the 28th of August. I get a £10 signing on fee because all players had a £10 signing. Even you had a £10 as well. All players had a £10 signing on fee. My contract for 1 year was £4 a week, £2 extra in the first team, £2 for a win, 1 for a draw. But if I had a good week, I was earning as much as the average working man. Because the average working man's pay was £8 a week in 1954. My dad was only earning about £9 a week. So if I was doing well, we were okay. You have to realise that in 1954, the Queen had only been on the throne 1 year. Food rationing had just come off. So if you could find a banana, you could buy one. Up till then, you couldn't. So it was, you know, it was a strange place, Exeter. Sidwell Street still looked as if it had just been bombed, as it had 12 years ago. So it was a different place completely. In the first month of September, I played 5 games in the first team, just 17, and it was wonderful. When I first saw St James's Park, I couldn't believe it. It was dead flat, and it had grass all over. Now, we didn't have any pitches like that in Ponty. You know, I just couldn't wait to get out there and play on it. And I played these 5 games in the first team. Wonderful playing with the older players. And we went to Newport, and I scored a goal, first goal. We lost 2-1, but my mum and dad had come over to watch us play. There was a bloke 3 rows in front, and he kept shouting, "Oh, come on, Graham. Oh, Graham, you could do better than that. Oh, Graham, you're rubbish." She thought she'd have a word with him after. She taps him on the shoulder after. He turns around, he's got a black and amber scarf on. He's a Newport supporter. He'd been shouting at Les Graham, the Newport inside forward. And my dad said he'd never take it again. You can't believe it, can you? I spent the rest of the season in the reserves, but I'd made a good impression in those 5 games. I've got a few things, I can't give you 20 copies. If you look at it, there's Morris Setters is actually in that photograph, and that was taken out at Heavitree Park. But there's the big one. This boy could be another Bastin. That's after playing 5 games in the first team on the left wing. And if you all know, I'm sure, Cliff Bastin was the best player to ever play for this club. He played for the first team when he was 15. He only played about 9 games at inside left. They sold him to Arsenal, and he scored 178 goals for Arsenal. 33 goals he scored in 1 season from the left wing. So he was a hell of a player. And there we are. Pass him back. I was rated as the next Cliff Bastin. Well, you know, no pressure there. And there's a photograph here of, I haven't seen this one. This is of the 1955 team that played in the FA Cup against Stoke, I think it was. In 1955, we had a nice little cup run. We went to Coventry, played Coventry away and beat them. Then we played Hendon at home in the second round, and we beat them 6-2. And then we played Stoke City in the third round, and after a draw at home, we lost the away game. But I want to tell you about the goal at Coventry. We beat them 1-0 because I scored it. Eddie Murphy was an inside forward, and he was playing that day, and he was out on the right wing. He dribbled in along the dead ball line and centered it into the middle. It was coming across about a foot off the floor. I came around the fullback, dived at it, and headed a goal past the Coventry goalkeeper, who was Reg Matthews, the England international. And I had a mark down my nose where I dived and headed the ball in the net, but scraped my nose all along the floor. I was proud of that one. 1957, I was in and out of the first team, playing a lot in the reserves. And in 1957, Norman Dodgin called me in, and he said, "We've had an offer from Preston North End for you. What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I don't know, boss. You know, what do you want me to do? He said, stick with me, son, and I'll get you a better club than Preston. And a month later, he was sacked. You can't believe it, can you? A month later, he was sacked. And well, I felt sorry about that because I loved the fella. He'd done so much for me. After I'd been training and playing with the full-time professionals for about 2 months, he called me in then and he said, you're starting work Monday? I said, what do you mean? He said, because I was in my element, I was having a great time. He said, well, you don't know this, but I promised your dad that I'd fix you up in a job just in case things didn't go right. He said, you're starting work on Monday with Portley, Lethbridge and White Chartered Accountants. Their offices are opposite the Guildhall, and you'll train Tuesday and Thursday evenings, and you'll be working full time. I said, oh, thanks, boss, you know. Not what I wanted to do at all. But from then on, I played as what they said was a part-time professional, but if I was in the first team, I was getting first team money, so that was all right. So my career in an office had started. So I had a lot to thank Norman Dodgin for. That was 57. Then we had a manager called Bill Thompson when Norman Dodgin went, and he was absolutely useless. He thought he was a banker. He walked around all the time, a beautiful blue suit, collar and tie, and he was hopeless. But he signed Johnny Nichols and Gordon Dale. And Gordon Dale, they played Portsmouth £7,000 for him or something, I think. And he was, next to Cliff Bastin, I would have said, was probably the best winger this club's ever had. Fantastic player. It was lovely to play inside him because whatever you wanted out of him, he gave you. He was wonderful. But Bill Thompson didn't last long, and Frank Broom came in. And Frank Broom put together what I would say was the best team that this club's ever had. And I think I've got a photo of most of it. Oh, there's a couple of photos of things about the Coventry. Yeah, there's the. There's a photograph of what I would say was one of the best teams to play for the club. I go to watch Cardiff City now as a season ticket holder at Cardiff City, and if you asked me the team that played for Cardiff a month ago, I'd have trouble remembering the names. But the best team that played for this club, I would say, Hunter Foley MacDonald, Mitchell Harvey Thompson, Stiffle Rees Calland, Nichols Dale. How can you do that? You know, from all those years ago, you just remember and write off, you know, ring off that side. And we're an absolute wonderful team. But how on earth we failed to get promotion, I don't know. Now, I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I'm going to be boring. I scored 22 goals that season. And Ted Callan, the big centre forward we got from Torquay, scored 27 goals. 49 goals between us as twin strikers. That, I reckon, is a club record. And there's no reference to it. There should be a blue plaque up here. In 1931, two fellas scored 48. But I don't think you'll find two strikers to have scored better than 49 goals in a season. So there we are. I've done enough bragging. Now then, I'm going to send round now a picture. The story behind it is Norman Dodgin left, and I loved him, and I never had a chance to say anything to him. So I never ever said to him, you know, thanks for all you've done for me. But at the start of 1958, I'd started to score a few goals, and because Gordon Dale had taken a number 11 shirt, I was now playing at number 8. I was an earlier Banksy, really. I was playing at number 8, and I was starting to score a few goals. And we played Oldham. And Norman Dodgin had gone from here to Yeovil to Barrow to Oldham. And I thought, this is my chance. You know, the guy's here now as manager of Oldham. I didn't have a chance to see him or say anything to him, but we ran out, kick off, and I look across and he's sitting on the bench. And I think to myself, I've got to make an impression. He's got to know that I wasn't wasted space. I could be a good player. And after about 20 minutes, the ball was played through the middle. I'm running onto it, and their goalkeeper comes racing out of the box to get the ball before I get it. And it's gone through my mind. I remember it so clearly. I was going to win that ball and show Dodgin that I was okay. I was a player. And I went in for that ball. I think I'd have gone through a brick wall. And that was my natural game. But I went in and their goalkeeper chickened out a bit and he dived off to the side. And I went through with the ball. I only had to run it into the net. And I get to about the penalty area, the penalty spot. If you see the photograph, I've got a big smile on my face. And I smash the ball into the net with my weaker foot, the left foot. And I think afterwards I could have screwed it, I could have hit it over the bar. Why didn't I just dribble it in? I was so up. Yeah. I smashed it into the net. And that is a picture of me smashing the ball into the net. And it's because I was trying to impress Mr. Dodgin on the wing. Yeah, I had a good season that season because we had this really good side, and when you have the two wingers, Nelson Stifle was as quick as anybody who's ever played, and Gordon Dale on the other side, Big Ted Callan running down the middle. I just used to follow him into the 6-yard box and pick up the pieces. He smashed everything in his way. He was a big, strong fella. But we failed to get promotion by a couple of points. So Frank Broom goes off to Southend. Who comes in then?
Johnny Newman.
I'm trying to think who it was.
Buxford.
Was it Glenn Wilson? The next one? I'm trying to think who it was after Frank Broom. Yeah, it might have been Glenn Wilson. Glenn Wilson was a wing half, a good wing half with Brighton, and he came in, but he was just a bit over the top, but he was a hard fella. Because it's the first time Manchester United played in the Football League Cup. We played at home, and Maurice Setters was their captain for the night, and Maurice had played here back in 54, 55. It was, I don't suppose there was anybody at that match. You were. Do you remember it? Do you remember how wet it was?
Yes.
You do, right? Yeah. It was a filthy day, and the pitch was a quagmire, and it was always heavy. And it suited us more than it suited them. After about 20 minutes, the newspaper report, which I must have that here somewhere. Where is it? Oh, here we are. newspaper report says, bold Rees rocks mighty United. I went through and the paper says that I brushed aside Nobby Stiles. You've heard of him? Brushed aside Nobby Stiles and knocked it past Harry Gregg. Harry Gregg, the hero of the Munich air disaster. So we were one up. Within 10 minutes, I'd knocked the ball past Harry Gregg again, and it was so muddy the ball stopped on the goal line. And Nobby Stiles kicked it off the goal line. I scored another goal, and it said that I'd fouled Harry Gregg, which I wouldn't do, would I? So we could have been 3 up, but we were only 1 up, and we drew the match 1-1. Yeah. And the next week we go up to Manchester, and they beat us easily there because they had Nobby Stiles and Johnny Giles in midfield, and they were too good for us there. But we're in the dressing room before the game. And when you're a visiting player, you go to another club, you'll always find a table in the middle of the dressing room. They'll put some programs out for you, for the visiting players. So you pick the program up and you immediately turn to the pen profile, because the pen profile, that's what they say you're like. And I was always 5'11". I don't know why. I was always 5'11", about 12.5 stone. It wasn't me at all. So I always used to turn to the pen profiles and have a laugh. But when I turned to the pen profiles, there was another bit in the program. You know who Nobby Stiles is, right? Do you know who Pushkas was? Everybody, you know Pushkas? Probably one of the best players in the world at the time. Now you listen to this. I was going to get you to read it out, but I don't. It says, Rees, a part-time accountant, was the star of the night. They're referring to the previous week. He probably gave Stiles more of a chasing than the mighty Pushkas had done for Real Madrid. Hey? If there's anything can go on my deathbed, that'll be it. Unbelievable. Have you ever had one like that, Banks? Better than Pushkas? Ah, dear. I did take some copies of the Manchester United program, and you can. They're only of the front part of the program, and. Right, well, we move on. Nothing much happened in the next couple of years, really. We weren't a very good side. We had a manager called Cyril Spears, who came from Cardiff City. He wasn't much good. He's a nice man, but he wasn't much good. And then, who came after him? Well, he brought with him Jack Edwards. And Jack Edwards was a right back with Crystal Palace. He'd come with Cyril Spears as trainer, but when Spears left, Jack Edwards took over the manager's job. And it was Jack Edwards then who was in charge of the promotion team. And the promotion team, fairly defensive outfit. We were all triers, but we weren't that sharp up front. We had Dermot Curtis and Johnny Henderson, and they were doing their best, but we needed a little bit of a spearhead up front. And Les Kerslake, the director, goes off to Cambridge and comes back with Mr. Banks. It was said that he'd been seen leaving the station with a bag marked cash. And he came back, he said, I've got Mr. Banks' signature, but he didn't have the cash. So we don't know what went on there, Alan. But we got Alan's signature. And I remember it so well because I was playing on the right wing then, and we played a game at Tranmere, didn't we?
We did.
And we picked you up on the coach on the way.
No,
No?
you were staying the weekend. I think you played it on the Saturday. Was it at Barrow?
Was it?
And then you went from Barrow and you were staying over the weekend at Southport.
All right.
And then I travelled down from Cambridge to Liverpool,
Yeah.
and then from Liverpool, and then I met you on the Sunday
Oh.
at Southport.
Oh, it's Southport.
So on the
Alright.
Monday morning,
Yeah.
we trained on Southport Beach,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then went from there to Tranmere.
Right. Yeah. And we
got
lost,
beat-
didn't we?
We got beat 2-1.
We lost the next match, didn't we?
The next match at home against, I think it was Halifax.
I thought, who's this bloke we signed? He hadn't scored for 2 games.
We got beat 1-0.
But
Then the third game
between
was,
then
we went to
and
Oxford United.
Christmas, you scored about 12 goals or something, didn't you?
Something like that.
So we'd found what we needed, a sharp edge up front. And yeah, it was a tough season, but we went to Workington needing 1 point, and Workington needed 1 point, and we'd both get promoted. Now some of the directors had come to this match, was big match, oh they turned up, and of course we normally went by coach. Oh no, this director's on board. They took us by train. So we go up to Carlisle. We're going across from Carlisle to Workington. Jack Edwards stops the coach. He said, right, all off. And he made us walk. Do you remember?
We did, yeah.
He made us walk along the road. There's no pavement. Along this sort of Lake District road to warm up. And the coach followed us behind. And after we'd gone about half a mile, the coach picked us up again. That was our warm up. We get to Workington and our directors go in with their directors for lunch. Now, we made a 0-0 draw. They've all had lunch together and we get a 0-0 draw. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? It makes you wonder what went on. Because we get back to Carlisle and they've already got a cake baked with icing on it. Congratulations on promotion. They couldn't have made that cake. By the time we finished the match, oh, I tell you, some funny things were going on in those days. So that was it. We came back on the train, got back into St. David's at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you've all seen the pictures, Banks in the ranks, and we loved being in the ranks. And that was it, promotion. We spent the next 2 weeks celebrating it. We went to various dinners, we went to the mayor's parlour, had drinks, and Hughes of Exeter, the Ford dealer in Southernay, gave us 2 cars, a Zodiac and a Consul, for 2 weeks that we could share amongst those who could drive. And I can remember my wife and I drove over Dartmoor down to Torquay, back along the coast, in a new Ford Zodiac, and we thought we'd made it. And that was our celebration of promotion. Well, we got 2 years left of my career here. We struggled the next year, but we managed to get a reasonable place in the 3rd division. But I found the fullbacks were now getting better. They were fitter, they were faster, not like the 4th division. And the season after that, we didn't do very well. And Arnold Mitchell, myself, Les MacDonald, we were put on the transfer list. Our time had come. And that was it. That was my career at Exeter City. And I couldn't have been at a better club. I'll tell you a funny little story now about what it was like being 16 and 17-year-old and coming to a club like this, still at school. How do you settle in? You read about George Best going to Manchester United, being homesick, going home, you know. Well, I wasn't homesick. It was a great crowd of players here, so I wasn't homesick at all. But the club found me digs, and they used to pay for the digs. I was in one digs for a week. I didn't like it. In another digs for another couple of weeks. Told Bill, Norman Dodgen, I don't like it here. So he did eventually find me digs after about 2 months, and with Mr. and Mrs. Simmons out at Sweetbriar Lane. And I stayed with them for 2 years. They were fantastic. But in the 2 months when I was in the digs, where the landladies hadn't offered to do my washing. Mrs. Simmons did, but they hadn't offered to do my washing. Well, what do you do as a young kid, you know? I told my grandchildren this. They said, that's disgraceful. Why didn't you go to the laundrette? I said, we didn't have laundrettes. Laundrettes. There was Egerton Laundry, which was, if you wanted a stiff white collar, you went there, but not for your normal. So what do? Every Monday morning, I'd make a little brown parcel, tied up with string, go to the post office, and send it off to my mum. Dirty socks, dirty pants, dirty vest, and a dirty shirt. And as clear as day, back it would come on the Friday. Clean socks, clean vest, clean pants, clean shirt, neatly ironed. And a dozen Welsh cakes. Eh? Same brown paper, same string. And that was part of how I survived in those first couple of months. But it was the happiest 2 months of my life. And I've had a happy life. But it was the happiest 2 months of my life. Just sitting in the changing room next to somebody like Ronnie Burke. He was a barrel-chested centre forward who'd played for Manchester United. And God, just sitting next to him, you know, I was in awe of these people. Ray Eagleton played for Leeds. Ted Buckle played for Manchester United. We had a few players like this. They were all top players. Andy Donaldson had played for Newcastle, and he was the only player in the club with a car. Right? There was nobody else with a car, and he was about 6'1", and he was a tiny Fiat. He could hardly get in it. And he was the only player in the club who had a car. If I remember, I can only remember a couple of the directors having cars. The old fellas like Sid Thomas and Jack Rigby, who had a tobacconist shop in Sidwell Street. Bill Crawshaw had a nice car. And I think Lou White, the builder, I think he had a car. But not many cars were about, you know. Arnold Mitchell used to come to training on a push bike. The rest of us either walked or we got the bus. And you can't believe that how things changed. And it changed in the next sort of 4 or 5 years, because by the time we got to the 60s, it had changed completely. But those early years, it was a different place. I'm sure I had another little story, but I can't remember. Yeah, I wanted to say this, and I told the chairman earlier. 1954, there were 4 people ran the club. We had a player manager, Norman Dodgen. Harry Hanford used to look after physiotherapy, and he was the trainer. George Gilbert was the secretary, and Sonny Clark was the groundsman. Those 4 people did everything that the club needed doing. If you look at your program for Saturday, there are 20 people doing those 4 jobs. Now I know they're doing it in a different way, and Sonny Clark's would have had the training ground and that sort of thing. But there are 20 people now doing those 4 jobs. George Gilbert, how he did it, I don't know. We had, our average crowds would have been about 8,000. There are only 4 now. So he had twice as many tickets to sell. How did George Gilbert manage to pay the wages, run the contracts, do the travel arrangements, sell all the tickets? I just don't understand it. I feel I'm missing something, but I don't think I am. The 4 of them did the lot.
He's an accountant, remember?
Amazing, absolutely amazing.
To run 4 teams then as well.
I've got to apologise to the board of directors, as they were, that I did not become the second Cliff Bastien. I did try. I was hard working, I think, but I wasn't a great player, and so I didn't become that. But their investment wasn't wasted, because I did qualify as a chartered accountant because of what they did for me. They had paid Mr. Lethbridge £300 for me to go into articles. You couldn't just walk into a firm in those days. You paid them to give you 5 years of articles. And £300 in 1954 in today's money would be £10,000. So they must have thought they had a hell of a player on their books. And they did make that investment for me, and I'll always be grateful for that. Do you think that's about
Graham.
enough?
That's absolutely brilliant. Well, I'm just going to ask you one question before opening it up.
Yeah?
That 3 days after the Workington game,
Yeah.
you played another game. Can
Plymouth.
Exactly. Now,
We-
people
we
here
had a-
like to hear these kind
We
of
did
stories.
a lap of honour.
You did a lap of honour.
That's the only lap of honour I've ever done.
It was the Devon Bowl.
The
The
final of
Devon
the Devon
Bowl.
Bowl.
We've murdered them.
Yeah.
We
And
won.
they were a second
No.
division team then.
No,
Yeah.
we won 4-1.
4-0. I've got.
4-1. It was 4-1. Plymouth scored first. Adrian Thorne scored a hat-trick.
Oh, did he?
And I got the other one.
You got the other one.
Ah, right.
8,141.
And after that game,
Yeah.
there was friends of Mr. Les Kerslake. One was a chap called Dave Hancock, and another one called Phil Roberts. Took us all out to dinner at the Buckrow Lodge.
Ah, at the Buckrow Lodge. Yeah. Yeah.
And we had
Yeah.
a little bit of a drink, not very much.
Yeah.
So not only have you got here today the heroes of our first ever promotion season, but you've got the heroes of thumping Argyle 4-0 and winning another trophy. So they won 2 trophies that season. So, George, thank you very much indeed. What a brilliant storyteller.
Oh,
Yeah.
So questions,
Graham,
Yeah.
memories.
Graham, do you remember what electricity started?
Sorry?
Do you remember what electricity started as?
No.
Shall I tell you? Lions Out Rangers, which is in Sybil's Albion, and they wore green and white shorts, green shirts and white shorts, and the training ground we used to be at Johan Davies Garage.
All right.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
Exeter City
Yeah.
started as St Sybil's United in 1901 and we wore green and
Yeah.
white.
That's right. And they played Sunderland up here, was winning 1-0 at half time, and lost 7-1.
Morris was left back, is that right?
Any other questions
You
or
didn't play in Brazil, did you?
Graham, who did you play for after you left here? You said you.
Sorry, I'm a bit much.
Who did you
My
play
wife says
Who did you play for after you left Exeter?
I had 18 months at Yeovil,
Oh,
but unfortunately the Yeovil team were just over the top, and I wasn't much help to them really. And we didn't have a very good 18 months there. But I went from there to Bridgewater, and I played there with Tommy Northcote, Brian Lancaster, Ernie Pym, Norman Packer. We had a really good side there for and we won the Western League in that first year. So I had 6 years at Bridgewater. Then I went to Cinderford for a year, and I ended up in local football in Cardiff. And I can remember a ball coming to me, going to trap it and set off down the wing, and the next thing, bang! And I thought it's time to pack in. This fella hammered. I didn't even see him coming. I thought it's time to go and play golf.
I've got one little thing.
Yeah,
right?
do, George.
So
Hey, it's not a tricky one.
no,
though,
no, it's not. I hope you remember this.
Tricky, George.
But like he used to practice Tuesday and Thursday evenings, and one time through the week we had this practice game organised on a Wednesday morning, and it was kind of 3 or 4 players, new players, or there was a couple of lads coming from school who were hoping to become professional soccer players, and they were going to be in the game at St James's Park. So Graham came up as well to play. So one of the lads, high school player, is called Bobby House, and he played. Remember him? He played in the reserves with me and all that stuff, and he was going to be a big star type of deal. So we start playing the game, and actually I wasn't playing, I was watching. So Graham's kind of playing in midfield and doing his usual running around a lot and all that stuff. The game's gone on for about 20 minutes, and Bobby House in midfield has not touched the ball yet, which is a bit, bit of a surprise. But anyway, he's out there. So the ball comes to Graham in the air like this, and he controls it, gets it on the floor like that, looks up, and then there's an almighty tackle on him. And we good tackle, Housie, shouted out. We shouted out to him because it was a hell of a surprise for him because Housie was on his team. I remember still looking up. We looked at Housie like, "What are you doing?" We were laughing. He was like, he thought, "I ain't coming up again on a Wednesday."
Can I tell you about a little bit? I'm bragging again. In 1958, we went to Port Vale. I just got married, and all the lads we'd been up to London on honeymoon, and we came back, and this is about a week afterwards. And they were all, "Oh, look at the state of him. Oh, he'd be useful this week," and sort of stuff they go. And we went to Port Vale, and I scored 3 goals, and they were all headers. What were you laughing at? They were all headers. And it was the only hat-trick I ever scored in the Football League. And we came in after the match, and I'm not thinking about it, but I could have had the match ball, Came in after the match, nobody said a word. Frank Broom, manager, not a word. Why do you think that was? We lost 5-3. You can't believe it, can you? The only time I had a hat-trick, and nobody commented. There was a little bit in the paper about, Rees scored a hat-trick, but that was it, and nobody said a word.